Hello and welcome to the Managing Space Information in Building Projects Best Practices webinar. My name is Johannes Aho and I'm the Marketing Manager of Gravicon. Manuel, you can hop to the next slide. And a little bit about us. We are a Finnish company offering BIM-related services as a software solution called Modelspace. And we are a part of Building Smart Association, and we have been developing Modelspace, a solution that we will discuss more about today. We have been developing Modelspace since 2010, and currently we have over 4,000 users globally. And we currently employ over 30 employees, and we have offices in Helsinki, Jyväskylä, Kuopio, and Tampere, so all over Finland, and we have also active operations in the EMEA section in Europe and South Africa. But today we have our guest speakers, our product manager for Modelspace Rooms, Johannes Aho. He's going to talk about space information management throughout the whole life cycle of the building and share his own experience from the user-centric point of view and offer best practices to the project. And before Johannes gets started, we have also guest lecturer Igor Adlersberg from Arhis and Ited. He's a established BIM professionals, and he has multiple years of experience in large-scale BIM projects and investment concept engineering. And Igor's presentation will focus on design, data, information management from the client's point of view, and he will bring valuable insights on how to use them as a competitive advantage. But without further ado, I would like to welcome all to the webinar. We will have a one hour time, so 2 p.m. is the scheduled ending time for our webinar, and we will go through the questions after the Ited presentation. If we don't have time to go through the question, we will answer directly to the chat box. And there will be after recording of this webinar if you want to share it to your colleagues or friends. But on my behalf, welcome, and please welcome our first speaker, Igor.
Hello, thank you. I think you can see my screen now.
Yep.
Cool. Hey all, good day. Thank you for having me here today. My name is Igor. I am an entrepreneur, and here in Latvia, together with my partners, I'm running a few companies. We are operating in the construction sector, and our expertise lies within the project and information management areas. I had been in the industry for around 15 years, participating in and managing projects like buildings and infrastructure design, MEP systems design, development projects of private and public clients, BIM management and coordination, construction industry digitalization, and integrated delivery of the assets. All of you are related to the construction sector. Despite working on different sites, we are still making an impact on the built environment where all these facility users are doing their business or living their lives. This is a good story starting point. Many stakeholders like us today are brought together with somewhat the same goal. It is quite typical for development projects of any scale and of any kind. So, okay, here is a story. While preparing this talk, I had to decide on the priorities of different topics that form this practical showcase. The same challenges are around us all the time. We're trying to prioritize programs, schedules, budgets, workforce, and tasks, so that in the end, we demonstrate positive outcomes. Usually in the form of money, profit, wealth, it really doesn't matter. What matters is the ability to prove your point and bring up enough evidence so that decision makers or our clients are fine with accepting your proposals. In other words, selling your work to the clients. I've decided to reflect on previous experience in design, management, and development, and quite soon I came up with 3 main ideas that we apply in our work. Design is just a project stage when stakeholders are to agree on requirements and test their possible implementation. Requirements management shall start right after the design starts. The second one, a mature and advanced BIM environment enables a better requirement management approach. And the third, the client's business development depends on if the digital asset is being delivered as a part of the project. Digital asset makes a solid foundation for a wide variety of analytical use cases. First things first, agile approach. I strongly believe in agile project management practices. In the essence, so-called agile manifesto, you can Google it, states core agile values like interactions of individuals over tools, working product or design or building over documentation, customer collaboration and collaboration with the customer over the contracts, and the love for change over the plans. It is necessary to point out that when we are saying something is over something, like customer collaboration over contracts, it doesn't mean that we are avoiding contracts. Contracts are a must, but the value of having better collaboration is higher if we compare it to the negotiation of the contract terms. If we are to be agile, it is necessary to make sure everyone is engaged, who is engaged, understands the job needs to be done. And the job is to create value and not necessarily the wasteful process. All agile practices are devoted to the constantly added value in the changing environment. This is so true for development projects, especially when we are considering timeframes. Development projects are usually implemented during from 2 to 4 years, including initial briefing, financing, design, construction, and sales. We have been researching many recommended frameworks existing out there somewhere, and basically each country has something to propose for the project management of the construction projects. And for now, we are considering the RIBA plan of work to be the most comprehensive and flexible. RIBA stands for the Royal Institute of British Architects. In the essence, RIBA plan of work is a stage and outcome guidance that is based on more than 50 years of gathering the industry's feedback in the United Kingdom. In general, RIBA plan of work details the following tasks that are quite common for any construction project. And these are: you have to agree on the appointments with the professional team. You need to develop a brief with the client. You need to create concept design options. You need to coordinate the design. You need to prepare a planning application. You need to apply for planning consent. You need to develop a set of construction information. You need to prepare a tender. You need to obtain consents required before construction. You need to award the building contract. You need to construct the building. You need to inspect the construction as it progresses, and you need to hand over the building. As you can imagine, each task requires some sort of stakeholder engagement and collaboration. This is a long process of trying to orchestrate the priorities, especially when you are moving between these tasks. Let's also review one important thing called project management, because if we're talking about tasks and program, this is the thing that really matters. Project management as a whole surely also includes such knowledge areas as integration management, scope management, quality management, and stakeholder management. For example, if you Google PM body of knowledge books, you will get a huge list of books worth investigating, but also you will see these two: Construction Extension for PM Book Guide and Agile Practice Guide. What this means? This means that construction projects somehow are really specific, so that you need some sort of extra guidance for the project managers to understand and to be able to deal with the project management during the construction or development project implementation. So for now, you should be getting the idea of the project as a whole, as we see it, and as our client starts to see it at some point. I do believe that it is critical to make sure that the client's expectations are to be managed. This means that we are to define the proper stages of the project, we are to agree on the deliverables, and we are going to talk about them a bit later, and we are to define quality. What exactly is the meaning and the measure of the quality? Compliance with the requirements, no more, no less, and this is the definition of the quality that is out there in every project management guidance, documents, or standards you might be finding. So, having a solid requirement management approach integrated, interlinked with the project management procedures and communicated, more importantly, with the client allows us to deliver often, to meet the requirements and deadlines, send invoices, make sure the team has a plan that keeps everyone motivated, etc., etc. We had been using the above mentioned approach or the method or the framework for some time now, but we are still refining it to suit each separate project. What matters now is the emerging of virtual design and construction solutions. For instance, building information management or modeling is one of the hot topics today. More and more, the clients are being pushed towards BIM implementations, as well as construction professionals are being pulled to adopt these ways of working. For instance, on the slide, you see the federated model of some building. So following the ISO 19650 standard, this is a client's responsibility to develop the so-called EIR document, or Exchange Information Requirements, or previously Employers Information Requirements. This document defines the digital asset to be developed as a part of the project, and also the purpose. Why does the client want it, and how he is going to use these models? If you remember the first part, where I said that we prefer to be agile and deliver often, you can understand that the same principles apply to the BIM delivery. How exactly? Well, quite straightforward. We developed the BIM execution plan, addressing defined BIM uses. So these are the BIM uses that are coming from the EIR from the client. He's saying that I'm going to be using the digital asset in that way. And we are proposing a few more from our side. And these are quite often, this is a rule of thumb, that we are proposing the following BIM uses, like communication, which means the possibility to use the information models and the information stored in the project management databases to communicate with the client, to establish a communication flow that enables us to actually come up with the decisions and to discuss them in a quick and efficient manner. This is the requirements management as itself. So technically, we are aggregating requirements at space levels. And by requirements, we usually understand not only functional requirements that are applied to the separate spaces inside the building or the facility, but we are talking about more broader scope of the requirements that, for instance, come from the building codes, from the users, from the client, from the design team, from the integrated deliveries teams, etc., etc. So basically, we're trying to establish some sort of list, some sort of database of the requirements so that we are tracking the progress and we are monitoring, we are testing the design, which is the next use case. We're testing it, and we are comparing how, to what extent, what was the level of the requirement implementation during the project, so that we can compare it to the expected results and communicate that indeed such requirements were implemented inside the building based on the digital models. So, as I mentioned, design testing and structured data delivery. So in the end of the day, we're talking about the use of BIM models. It's the essence of the requirement management from our side. And what we are doing is that our design teams are not only compiling this building out of the 3D models of the separate building products, but also we are working with space information. This is a virtual object inside the 3D model that in the essence has the number and the name, but also we are linking some additional information to the spaces so that we are keeping track on the outcomes. And this is structured in a way that is proposed by the Open BIM consortiums, Building Smart, etc., etc. So we are talking about the BIM tools in the essence, like Revit, ArchiCAD, Tekla, etc. And we are talking about the open formats like IFC, and we are talking about the capacity of these tools to be linked and to merge together this separate information generated or structured somewhere else in different databases. But again, this is only partially relates to the client's business case as a whole, more talking about technical implementations of the project. Let's simplify. The client asked for, and the supply chain is delivering computer models of the facility, including building systems, and the contractor, the builder, is to use this information to build the actual buildings physically. And sometimes also, he's responsible for the enrichment of this database with the so-called as-built information. One more principle is left. It's the client's potential to use the digital asset for his business development. So the first thing to consider is that the client is investing money in exchange for the product, the building. This is the product he's expecting to receive in the end of the day. And in case all the involved parties did a good job and collaborated efficiently, it is expected that after 2 to 4 years of the development cycle, which includes the design, the construction, the handover, this building is built. This building has tenants. This building generates profits because it meets the expectations of the users, and they are working efficiently inside this building. So as well, that digital models capture all necessary information for the facility management, for instance, like manuals and warranties, together with contact information of the ones responsible for the repairs of the installed products, of the installed machines, etc. But still, other model use cases shall be considered as a part of the effort to get something more out of the construction projects, not only the physical building and some sort of digital information stored somewhere in the service. So I've selected a few that I think are usually speaking to the hearts of the building owners more. These are the product description and its potential reuse, what it means in case the client, your client, or you are the client, who has a chain network of stores, of fuel stations, of hospitals, of kindergartens, etc., etc. Can you imagine the level of the value of this information that had been not only structured in an open BIM manner, but also these requirements that were generated from the very beginning and refined during the project implementation had been stored and mapped to the spaces inside your facility, and they actually are meeting the requirements, modern requirements of the building users. So in that case, you can effectively reduce the time, the effort necessary for the creation of this similar building, or at least the elements of the similar building, which makes it quite impressive workflow to be followed at least by the design companies. So we are creating our own intellectual property database by the means of just, to some extent, technicalizing or automating the requirements management and mapping of these requirements to the developed spaces that store the function, that store the systems, etc., etc. The next one would be the profitability analysis. In case you are developing better information models with a bit more modern ways, like including 4D or 5D information inside the design models, which is in some projects the case. So you are seeing in the end of the day, what was the price, what were the costs of each separate elements or the spaces themselves, because you can simply aggregate the necessary information about the products installed inside the spaces, and that is how you are basically estimating the price for the space for its erection. And in that case, you have the historical information of the amount of investment you had to invest, and you are having the fact after the construction works are done, and you are having some sort of capacity to predict the costs in the same manner in case you are starting the new development. So this is the profitability analysis, the part of it, and the other part relates to actually having some sort of ROI calculations, return on investment calculations, when you are comparing the amount of money you are getting from your tenants to the amount of money you actually invested inside the separate building to assess the spaces, assess the functions, and in the end of the day, assess the feasibility of the construction itself. And for sure, this also relates to the lessons learned aggregation, the capacity to join all this information together and make use of it in the next projects, during the next developments, during the project management sessions, during the business development of your own or your clients' proposal preparations for your clients. When you are saying, when you're reflecting to your previous experience, but you are not talking in some theoretical way, you have the capacity to demonstrate that here you go, this is the facility that had been delivered, these were the workflows we had been using, and these are the outcomes. So if you like it, or you have a desire to have something similar, let's discuss, let's start not from scratch, but let's start from these lessons learned and progress forward. And one more thing to mention, the last one, it's the upcoming trend, the so-called digital twin application combined with artificial intelligence and combined with machine learning solutions, where in the essence, the capacity to calculate and predict different metrics based on the structured, historically saved and aggregated information, which means that despite the fact you don't have the necessary algorithms to perform the calculations, for instance, about the profitability or the construction costs, you can generate it by using the machine learning, or you can try to link your facility by means of digital twin to the building management systems. So in that case, you are keeping track of everything, and all this information indeed is stored somewhere in a conscious manner, for instance, using the common data environment process as it is described in the modern BIM standard. So that's all for today. Thank you very much. And I hope the things I told you would positively impact your ways of working.
Yes, thank you, Igor, very much. I have a few questions for you. First one being, could you give a practical example where you have succeeded in handling requirements in design?
Well, we had been delivering many design projects during almost 30 years. And I could say that the biggest level of successes we had was when we had been working with the, as I mentioned, chain clients. They have a chain retail stores around Baltics, and they have their guidelines expressed in the text form. These are the brand books, so-called. And in case you are, you have this ability or capacity or the resource to somehow subdivide these requirements and present them in a structured manner, we start talking with the client, because it's the moment they see that actually we are working and the design is fit for their purpose. And we are not comparing the textual explanations inside the brand books, like you have few paragraphs of text explaining how the building or the system should look like, but we are talking about the segregated points for finishes, for walls, for MEP systems included in these spaces, etc., etc. So this is how it should be done, I suppose. You need to start with something. Unfortunately, I cannot tell that practically you can start implementing such things with your client in case the client has no structured approach to expressing himself beforehand.
Yes, thank you. Do you have any practical about the if the requirement management is done properly? Do you have any estimations how much an organization could save cost-wise and time efficiency-wise in the projects?
I could tell you that it is not that directly linked to the requirements management, because you cannot buy requirements management. You need to just start doing it and you will see the efficiency by the time savings. So when we are considering the client and we are making a proposal for the client, we are expressing ourselves, we are saying that we are doing such things, and that is why we can reduce the time for the approvals with your departments and you yourself as a client, and that is something that brings value, and we are reducing the time of the delivery of the whole project in comparison to our competition companies. It does not work always, for sure, because there are other aspects that really matter. But these are the things like BIM, integrated delivery, virtual design and construction, requirements management, project management, that compile this set of good practices that each separately brings some portion of the value, and that requires your team to support you in this vector. But in the end of the day, it matters how are you able to integrate almost everything in your practice, in your workflows.
Can you remember one example, perhaps, about a case that they kind of implemented the requirement management processes efficiently, and how much time did they save? If you have any kind of example about project, you can of course speak about anonymously, but how much time did they save?
I can tell you how much time is being wasted on site when the changes are to be implemented just because somebody did not do the review of the design drawings properly and in a timely manner. So usually during the design, the change request takes, well, in case we are not touching the structures of the building, etc., and we are talking more about the functional composition of the building, of the spaces, etc., it takes not more than 1 day to implement the changes and inform the rest of the team to change their models, their solutions, you know, just move something around so that we are increasing the space area. But during the construction, this usually takes from 3 to 5 days just to agree on the direction where we are moving the wall. And this automatically means that this time is wasted not only by people sitting in front of the computers like designers, but this time is spent by the machines and by wall construction site that is being, you know, launched and not doing its work.
Okay. Thank you, Igor. If you have any questions for Igor during the presentation, you can ask in the chat box. But I think now we could jump to the next presentation that we have today. Our product manager for Modelspace Rooms, Johannes Aho. Welcome.
Thank you, Jonas. Okay. Hello, everybody, and welcome on my behalf also. I'm Johannes Aho, and I'm the product manager at Grabicon of the Modelspace management module, or Modelspace Rooms module. And as a product manager, my areas are in developing the product as a whole and also the services that accompany it. And in a sense, trying to create the product and move it towards place where it's as efficient and as useful for the clients as possible. My own background is in architectural design. I've been in different positions, different roles on multiple different kind of buildings, about 10 years. And for the last 4 years, basically the last position I was before Rabicon was heavily involved in university projects, both in campus development and university building projects. And one of the things that I really got into in the university project is the user-centered design processes and the overall engagement of the end user of a building. Because usually in university buildings, and especially technically demanding buildings, for example, laboratories, it's crucial that we have the end users heavily engaged in the project. When we talk about space information, before talking about managing it, let's talk about the information itself. We have different stages, as Igor just told us about the plan of work stages, and we also have the different kind of information regarding the space that evolves during the life cycle of building. Usually we start with the basic needs of the client, of the property owner, the operations and functions that are to be actually situated in the building. And that's usually the start point of a project, to have some kind of needs. And also at that stage, the information itself is more of a bigger picture of what kind of operations, what kind of functions, and how much space in large scale they need. When we move forward, we start to put these into more detail formats, and we end up with requirements of the actual spaces, technical, functional requirements of the spaces, so that they actually can serve the purposes that they were meant for. And then, of course, we start design processes. At some point, the requirement gathering and the design processes, of course, can overlap. But then at some point, we actually have design solutions that are the answers to the requirements. And in that sense, it's important to understand that each of these steps or each of the stages of evolution of the information has to serve the next phase and the next stage that is required from the information itself. Then, of course, after design or during design, partially, we get information for the procurement and for the construction of the building. This is partly design information and partly information about the different products that are going to be used to implement the designs. And of course, in the end of construction, we have the information of what was actually built and how and with what materials, what products, and so on. And in the end, we have the use and maintenance phase of the building, and just a moment. And then when we talk about the information that is gathered, that is useful during the use and maintenance phase, is actually spans over all the previous stages of the information, of the format of the information. And in a sense, what we have is the different kind of understanding of the potential of the build space. So we have the potential of different uses the space is good for, and we also have information on the potential that the space can be turned into through different kind of modifications. And at this point, as Igor said, this is the actual goal, is to create information management in a way that we can deliver the end client, the property owner, both the building and the information on the building. So we talk about digital twin or asset information model. And as also Igor explained, was that when we have a process that is actually documented and created with a purpose, we get the understanding at the end of the project for the next projects as well. And also the use and maintenance phase of the building actually gives us understanding of how the information should be constructed from the very early phases of the design. And in a sense, we don't have a one-way street, but we have a cycle of space information kind of evolution, and we can always refine it during the repeats of projects. For one client, or of course, when we talk about different kind of, for example, consulting companies, we can, in a sense, recycle and refine the way the data is managed through different projects. In an actual building project, the data is always needed in certain stages, in certain formats, but it is also accumulating during the project. And when we have a huge amount of data collected, especially when we talk about technical requirements, we get a huge data input in certain phase of the project, and we get more added to it. It's get refined, it's get changed, utilized, and more detailed during the process. And we have the number of participants increasing that is actually involved in both creating and modifying the information. At the same time, when the number of participants increases, also increases the risk of losing data and losing the process. And when I talk about losing data or lost data, I don't simply mean that it's in a place where we can find it, but also that it's in a format, in a form it's really difficult to utilize for the project on different stages. And of course, that is due to the losing the process of the data management if it's not created clearly enough. And when we talk about the building project and different stages, we have to understand that all the information required is actually serving the different decisions and approval processes of the project. And if we don't have the information in a useful format for the decisions of the building project, basically we have to create the information again, or create new information to provide the necessary details for decisions and approvals. So in a sense, we have to have data accumulating in a way that it's useful for the actual project and also useful for the different kind of decisions and approval processes during the project. One interesting thing about building projects is how the costs actually are realized basically mostly during the construction phase or the late design development phase of the project. But the fact is that most of the decisions or the decisions that most affect the costs of a building is actually made in the very early stages of the project. And once again, this is one of the reasons why we have to have understanding of the end result of the project in the beginning of the early design phases. And when we try to simplify this kind of, in a sense, logic about cost management in a building project, we can simplify it by realizing that in the early stages of the project, we define the requirements and also the costs, most of the costs, when we have the functions, the operations, and the requirements of the spaces of the building. And then during design development and construction, we are actually managing the requirements and costs already made in the earlier phases. So in a sense, we don't make usually at the most part of the project, we usually don't create new costs, or at least we shouldn't, if we have the requirements created in a way that we can just follow the requirements and keep make sure that the costs are still in the framework that was created in the early project. So in a sense, we start from defining and creating, and then we manage throughout the project. And we're talking about both requirements and cost in the sense that when the requirements are made well in the beginning, they actually represent the costs very well, even during the latter parts of the project. And then, of course, when the building is actually built, we have all the tools we need to secure the delivery, so that the client is actually getting what they ordered in the first place, and so that we can actually compare the constructed building to the requirements that were created in the early stages of the project. How to do this? Modelspace as a product is a platform for creating data, communicating data, and utilizing data. In a sense, manage data. And when we think about how the information is used in a building project, we have the requirements, design, costs, and decisions. And of course, the costs in this sense both include calculations during the early stages of the project, and then the actual realized costs of the construction of the project. And this kind of information cycle goes on throughout the whole project, and has different stakeholders, both creating the information and utilizing it. And we start, of course, from the decision to start planning a project. In this example, I use a very end-user centered design process, but of course the requirements can come from the building, from the property owners organization also, without the end users being as heavily involved in all projects. What is important for this whole cycle of data for the end users is that the process itself is easy, so that it's easy for them to participate in a building project, and they have confidence that their role is actually making a difference. and that they don't need to do unnecessary work to participate in a project. I have space specialist here. It's not a term that is always the same, but for example, in hospital projects in Finland, the space specialist or space designers in some places are the ones representing the end users and collecting the end users and the property owner and collecting the information about the spaces, about the rooms and functions in them, and is actually the one that is securing the functionality of the building, so that the building actually answers to the functions that it is it's supposed to be serving. Then we have designers, and especially architectural designer is often the one managing the data. So when we have ever increasing amount of different kind of data coming into the project, the managing data, the actual act of both creating and implementing the data management and the data itself in the design process is critical for the designers, both for efficiency, so that they don't use their time to tasks that could be done in better ways, but also so that they can be certain that all the information that is gathered is actually usable for them. Then we have the contractor or cost accountants, anyone who is basically trying to get the kind of information from the project that you can calculate things and you can create procurements and actually realize the project. And for them, the clarity of the data, so that there's no risk of misunderstanding of the data itself. And then that the data is in a way that it's usable for different kind of automated processes. So basically the data is computer readable. And then project managers, project manager can be outside consultant or part of the organization of the client. But for them, of course, it's important that the whole process is efficient and that the information used and passed on is actually trustworthy, that you can trust on the information that is created and managed in the project. And so the property manager, property owner or project management at the higher level can understand the information. It's structured and it could be filtered in a way that they can have the level of understanding they need to for the decisions they are making, and then they have confidence in the delivery of the whole project. And Modelspace for us is the tool that all these needs and in a sense motivations of the different stakeholders can be managed as clearly as possible and as efficiently as possible. And so Modelspace is just not just a database, but it's also a platform for communication, for approval processes, and overall a support for the process that has been decided for the whole data management of a project. Modelspace Rooms, in short, as I said, it's a database with an REST API to connect it to other softwares. We have the user interface that has been created during the or developed during the last 10 years, and during the last year we have heavily accelerated the development and are now actually at the in the process of publishing a new version. And the user interface, one important thing for us is that it's consumer friendly in a way that it doesn't need any expertise, any building industry experience or know-how to use it. And we are always, when developing the user interface, doing the development with the understanding of our clients and end users and with their feedback. One important part of the model space is the connection with BIM. And as Igor said earlier, there's different kind of lots of different softwares. For us, IFC as an open format is the way we are going forward at the moment, so that it can be, Modelspace can be connected to any kind of software using IFC. We can both get information from IFC models, and we can write information on IFC models. And then through our REST API, we can create different kind of integrations to any number of softwares out there. And for example, when we talk about digital twin or the asset information model, we believe that it's always needs some kind of integration of different kind of softwares. And we believe that model space is integral in the space information aspect of realized buildings. And for the end, I'll quickly show you a sneak peek of the actual user interface. Here we have a typical display of a project. We have the room program, which is basically used to overview of the project, comparing different kind of design solutions against the requirements, and then also for the approval processes and overall navigation of the project. We have the BIM connection, which is especially useful for the end users to navigate and orientate themselves in the project. We use it for data import and data export, as I explained. And then we have the specifications of the rooms, which is used for both data input and data utilization. And this whole package is aimed so that the different stakeholders previously introduced can all get access to the same information. So the information is accessible, the information is usable, and the information is manageable. And that's it actually for me. Is there questions, comments?
Yes, thank you, Johannes. Yeah, there is a how efficient is the modern requirement management? What kind of practical results you have experienced yourself during your work?
From personal point of view, as I said, I've been working with university project previously, and I was actually a Modelspace user myself before I came to work with the actual product. One practical example is, for example, a laboratory building in Turku, Finland, where without the requirement management we had with Modelspace, we wouldn't have known how to ask the right questions in a situation where the laboratories had a flooring that was basically, we were told in the beginning in a textual way that it needs to be very durable chemically in the laboratories. But we also got information on all the spaces about what kind of chemicals they use, what kind of chemical processes even is going on in the rooms. And in the end, we could actually find a floor material that was very cost efficient comparing to the one we had originally chosen. And as Igor explained earlier, there's a huge difference with having a text explaining how the building should work, how the spaces or processes work inside the building, and to actually have detailed, structured information about the technical needs of the spaces. And in this situation, the difference was that we actually could choose a floor material that was both suitable for the end users, for the functions of the building, and was more cost-friendly for the project. And the difference was huge.
Yes, thank you, Johannes. There are lots of different user categories and user titles for Modelspace Rooms. How would you narrow down kind of the main target groups who are actually using Modelspace as an everyday tool? How would you what are the most, who are those people who are using this?
Yeah, if I try to make it as simple as possible, I would put them into 3 categories. People who are experts of the end use of the building, who are creating the different needs for the building. It can be anyone from the property owners organizations, the end users, or even consultants. The second groups, and of course they also need to be part of the accepting the rooms and the designs. So the first part is the one creating the information that explains what is needed. The second group of people is the one creating both using the information created by for the needs or requirements, and then also creating different kind of design solutions and also different kind of product specifications. And then the third group is people who are mostly using the information, for example, the end users, and in certain parts of the construction phase. But in a sense, I would say the 3 groups are yeah.
Yeah, and one more question. As we launched the webinar discussing about the new features of Modelspace Rooms, Modelspace X, could you briefly describe what is being renewed and what is kind of upcoming in the next year or so for Modelspace? What is the future of Modelspace?
For people who have used the previous version of Modelspace, the first things that are new have developed is the view. As you can see, we have multiple features that we can use at the same time and are interacting to each other. The whole user interface itself, the managing of the data is more in a sense, it reacts faster and it's more you can tailor it to needs of your own use. That's one of the bigger things coming now. Then we have the whole new BIM connection, BIM tool, and overall the things that are coming in the next year and the next 2 years is kind of having all the information, all the features already in Modelspace brought into your fingertips at one glance. And then when we go further, we will have lots of different kind of integrations, lots of different kind of new information we are getting from the BIM models, and more advanced reporting, also different kind of exports. But the overall change is that you have all the information needed more quickly at your hands.
All right, thanks, Johannes. And yeah, we are coming to the end of the webinar. I hope all the participants have enjoyed our webinar today, and the recording of this webinar will be presented on YouTube tomorrow. We will send an email regarding that with the link to the webinar itself. And if you have any further questions, you can email them to me or directly to Johannes or Igor. And yeah, that's pretty much about it. We are presenting new webinars during the year, so please follow us in LinkedIn and Facebook and subscribe to our newsletters. And regarding the Modelspace Rooms, we are launching new content in our website. So if you are interested, you can check out gravicon.fi. But on my behalf, I would like to thank the guest lecturers that we had today and the participants, and see you in the next webinar. Thank you.
Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.